Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Polo Reef and Champion Lighting and Supply. Hey, welcome back to the show. My name is Keith, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Dong. Dong, how's it going?
Oh, excellent. Very good. Very good. The coral grows like nuts again.
It's good. It's growing like nuts. That's a good problem to have. That's a good problem to have. What's new, man? I mean, besides the strong coral growth, anything that you've been doing differently to get that extra growth happening there in the tanks?
I turned off my calcium reactor.
You turned off your calcium
Finally.
reactor?
Yes. Now
Really?
I'm calcium reactor less. No calcium reactor.
What are you? How are you supplementing?
Dosing.
Parts 1 and 2?
Yep. Just a two-part dosing. Yeah, with magnesium. That's it.
Why?
Yes.
Why? Geez, then you must be dosing like a ton of that stuff.
Oh my God. It's like it's a lot. It's a lot. But the coral grows better though.
Yeah, well, that's a topic for a whole nother show.
Oh yeah, and now my pH is actually much higher than before.
Oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about this show. This is right up your alley, Dong. We're going to be talking about lighting, deep dive.
I've been waiting for this.
Yeah, we got Tullio from Reef Brite on. We've got Luca from Quanta Lights on. We've got Logan from Reef Breeders on. Those guys are waiting in the wings back there. But before we bring them on, I do want to thank the sponsors of this live stream. Very thankful for the sponsors. Polo Reef. Make sure to check out Polo Reef's latest YouTube videos. Seriously, they've been dropping some really cool stuff lately. They're still in line from you there, Dong. Seriously. The team is wrapping up a pretty crazy year, and they actually take you back to where the entire 17,000-gallon reef started. I saw that video. It's well worth watching, all the way from the early days to what it's become now 13 years later. Wow. They also go 15 feet under the aquarium for some behind-the-scenes maintenance, dig into ICP tests that are showing unexpectedly high metal levels, and even team up with the Ivy Leagues, where Andrew's been working with researchers at Yale to bring more scientific edge to the hobby. Super cool stuff. If you haven't already, please make sure you're subscribed to @Polo Reef on YouTube so you don't miss any of the new videos when they drop. And the other sponsor is Champion Lighting and Supply. Many thanks to Todd at Champion for sending me the Reef Delight lens port. I'm going to show this clip again. Dong's got it right there. This is I shot this video using the lens port and the coral lenses. It's just incredible. I used to put my phone in a top-down glass box or plastic box, whatever you call those viewing boxes, and it was very hard to do, cumbersome, and I was always worried about dunking the phone, or getting water on it. But I'm a big fan of these lens port coral lenses. So if you want to pick one up, go visit championlighting.com. So with that, we're going to bring in our guests for tonight. We've got Logan, Luca, and Tullio. What's happening there, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
Luca, we're on, man.
All right.
How's everybody doing on this fine evening? You guys getting all ready for the holidays?
Yeah, I mean, it's winter time, so this is the time of year to really focus on the tank. I honestly shook a lot of things up, added a lot of reactors and stuff like that. So getting ready to basically get everything on autopilot and smooth.
Can everybody hear me? I know, Luca, it sounds like you can't hear. Tullio, can you hear?
Keith, I can hear everybody but you, buddy.
Oh, really? You can't hear me?
Oh.
Huh. That's odd.
Yeah, no. I can hear Dong, I can hear Logan, I can hear everybody but you.
Huh.
Oh, that's odd.
That's really weird. Hang on one second.
I'm looking at Luca's desk.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you
Oh, yeah,
now.
I can hear you. Yeah, yeah.
Now
Yes.
you can hear me now. Did anybody, was the audio from from the opening of the show not even audible?
I could
I
not
heard
hear
it
it.
just fine.
Everything's fine.
Don, could
I
you
can look at Luca's secret on
you-
the table.
hear me, Don?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Everybody in the audience there is watching. If somebody could drop in the chat whether or not you were able to hear the intro and me thanking the sponsors and all that stuff, it'd be we heard you. Okay, we can hear you. All right, Luca, can you hear me now? He's working on something. All right.
Yeah.
Well, if everybody
All right.
if everybody can hear me, we'll keep our fingers crossed so Luca can get back into the game here. Just kind of a general question for everybody. What kind of feedback are all you guys getting, from hobbyists in terms of what they want out of aquarium lighting in the future? And are you incorporating that feedback into any new products? What seem to be kind of like the biggest asks in terms of aquarium lighting these days?
I mean, what I get a lot of requests for is like app features, that sort of thing. As far as like updating the spectrum, a couple changes that I've actually made recently. I mean, with the Meridian, I got the default layout that was based on a lot of like customer feedback, working with the photons, that sort of thing. And after seeing everybody's program with the photons and how they were setting their lights, kind of made the initial layout. But I find some customers, they're not as thrilled with like the cool blues, for example, because they're kind of bordering on the cyan. So not everybody's like super psyched about that kind of color tone. But the most recent thing that we've done is release the shallow reef version. So instead of having just 2 white LEDs, we have the default OG spectrum has like 1 warm white and 1 neutral white. We've got basically just doubled that and put them on separate channels. So you have 1 warm white channel, 1 neutral white channel. So you kind of dial in your color tones a little bit more that way. And that one I've actually found pairs extremely well with like folks who are doing like SPS heavy reefs, and they pair them with the UV blue edge bars. So in order to balance out like those extra white LEDs, you can add in all that royal blue, additional indigos, violets, and kind of just play around even more with the color spectrum. And they've actually proven to be pretty popular.
What about you, Tullio? What are you hearing these days?
Well, it's interesting because, again, I've been doing this for a little while.
Yeah.
And like you've heard me say in many of my talks, the needs of the corals really don't change. So again, it depends when we're looking at features. Are we talking about aesthetics, or are we talking about, let's say, scientific aspects of it? Because many times people use that color spectrum in the same kind of sentence, and they're actually 2 separate things. Color, spectrum. And so, for example, even with spectrum, obviously I work with spectrometers, all this different equipment. Unless corals have different needs, like Logan, you were talking about shallow corals, right? So if we were talking about shallow corals versus corals, much deeper, those are going to be 2 completely different lighting environments. They're going to be 2 completely different lighting environments. So again, what I try to address with hobbyists, yes, a lot of it is basically app. People want, features in the apps and everything else like that. What I've always tried to focus on is, I think it's great. I think a lot of the features, yes, to address those. But my philosophy is, unless it actually makes the light source better, right? Otherwise, it's just a feature. And many times, if we think about it, like my refrigerator, I can order from Amazon on my refrigerator. Does it make it a better refrigerator? You know what I mean? It's kind of a catch-22 in that regard. Because at the end of the day, like even Sanjay said, a photon is a photon, light is light. So the needs of the corals haven't really changed. I guess what has changed a little bit is our understanding of what those needs are.
Keith, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now we
Yeah.
can. Can you hear
Yes.
us?
Yeah. So I see some comments. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my. I went and fixed it, and it froze. So I'm back here, and my.
Yeah, we were having problems
camera's
before
not
we got on live. We were trying to get Luca out of the portrait mode, and you had it, man. You were in landscape there for a little bit, but I guess the audio got screwed up, huh?
Yeah, it all froze, and so here I am.
Yeah,
what are you guys talking about?
What are we talking about? Lighting.
Lighting.
So now the first question I threw out there was, what's everybody hearing from customers in terms of what customers are asking for in terms of lighting, features, what are the big asks that people are passing along to the light manufacturers that they would like to see in the future? I mean, Luca, do you have anything that
Yeah. Can you guys hear me better now? Because someone said Luke is very quiet. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think every person on here has a little bit different niche in the lighting industry. And I'm the simple get her done kind of light designer. So I'm getting requests for simplicity, ease of use, easy to set up. And I'm finding the need for 2 channels at max. So that's where I'm really focusing, Keith, on my next product line. And I'm trying, I am going to have a cohesive ecosystem with a controller that I'll put $20 on it. In 5 minutes, you can program your entire lighting schedule and don't have to worry about apps, don't have to worry about things like that. So I'm keeping it simple. And I'm keeping it affordable. Inflation has hit everyone in this industry really hard. And so I'm doing ways to offset tariffs. I'm working on a lot of things. And I think that's the number one thing I've got is thank you so much. I can afford these. And I try to, my standard is the basic mounting options are going to be included with the light. I think a lot of customers are souring on, I just bought this, let's just say $999.99 light, and now I got to spend $160 on a way to mount it. And I think, so I'm trying to bring value that way.
Tullio and Logan, are you guys kind of running the same thing in terms of trying to figure out ways to cut costs with the tariffs and what have you? Is that impacted your businesses?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, at the end of the day, the tariff just raises the price for everybody. It's unfortunate, but I mean, it is what it is. Just kind of had to work it into the cost and move on. And as far as like making stuff more affordable for everybody, I mean, that's kind of how I try to like offer different options. So for like a 4-foot tank like behind me, I've got a Meridian 45 on that. That's one of my prototypes. But realistically, I mean, this is mostly anemones and soft corals in here. I could get away with 2 Meridian 11s, no problem. And that's a significant cost savings versus a 45. And then as far as the mounts go, I hear what you're saying on that, Luca, for sure. I mean, I used to do that with the photons that had like side legs and hanging wires. The one thing that I found is like kind of inevitably it just works its way into the price of the unit. So people are paying for those mounting options no matter what. And what happens is, I mean, there's 100% chance that one of those kits gets thrown out. When I was doing it with like hanging and side mounts, because you can't use both in the same light. And I found a lot of people also were doing like DIY options.
Yeah,
I definitely don't rule out, offering, if you want to do it like as a discount without the mounts or something like that. I'd definitely consider that.
I like that idea. That's something. Yeah. So you have a set price, and then if you don't need the mounts, you can take it out. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Because like some folks will use like 80-20. Some folks will put them in a canopy and they'll use like T-tracks. I mean, like my lights have bolts on top, and there's no 2 systems are alike. So a lot of people will do like these cool like floating canopies, and all they need is like the 6mm bolts or the nuts that go on top of the light, and they can slide it into their very own assembly. So it really comes down to like, I mean, if you're not super DIY savvy, or like you live in an apartment, then you just throw like back of tank mounts on there. You know, the next step up would be like you do hanging wires, or you could do side of tank mounts. Like, depends on like how much time you want to invest in like building the assembly versus like what look you're going for. But yeah, if you're like really DIY inclined, like some people will just build their entire canopy and mounting system and just not have any need for that.
Yeah, and Logan, that's a great approach. That's a great approach, Keith. You're familiar with my K series and X series and things like that. And what I've always focused on is, in fact, that, meaning, you know, you can hang them yourself, make them compatible. For example, many of our systems are compatible with RMS, HMS, Kessel mounts. I can just go right down the list of different mounts, because when somebody has invested money in mounting, the last thing oftentimes they want to do is throw it out to put new lights on there. So make it easy to work with their other mounts and things like that. And of course, listen, cost is something that's always in everybody's peripheral, but you have to balance that with quality. I mean, that's just the name of the game. You know, there is that. Yes, you can buy inexpensive lights. Listen, you can buy inexpensive lights on Amazon and make them work on your aquarium if you have enough of them. But then again, there's going to be a balance. You know what I mean? Depending on features, depending on the number of other things. That's why you have specialty companies that make aquarium lighting, for example, because they will more address, let's say, hobbyist needs and things like that. And it's always been like that. You know, you have lights you can start with, and then as your system progresses and grows, or as you progress into the hobby, your needs may change, so many different factors. And so there's that. You know what I mean? There's different levels for everybody.
Yeah, since the LED has been around for like 15, 12 years, something like that. So right now that as a retailer, so also I repair lights as well, all sorts of lights, LED lights. So what I heard from my customers is that now people realize that why pay for premium LED instead of some no-name thing on Amazon? It's about reliability. Right. So basically, yeah. So some people can spend like $50 to buy an LED light off Amazon, and then after 6 months, a year, the thing is not working. He buy it again. Right. And then the reliability is really right now, since LED has been around for long enough. Now people realize that how important reliability is. So probably that's one of the reasons when your Logan's Reef Breeder, the used one, are selling so hot. Because
I think tremendous, honestly, for electronics.
Yeah. That for the actually I have a list, a waiting list for people that are asking for used Reef Breeder photons.
Used,
seriously, used Reef Breeder photons, because they cannot buy anywhere. So if somebody trade in a photon, I would go down the list and text somebody saying, "Hey, now there's a 48-inch available." So the next one will come in, and to basically within a day, boom, just gone. So far I have 0 in stock, used one. One comes in, it goes out.
So all right, we might as well just get right into this, because what's happening there, Chris? Mr. Meckley, metal halide equals the king of reef lighting. Here we go. I've already seen the chatter of some other folks too, in terms of metal halides versus LEDs. So why don't we just kind of like dig into this this part. I know on this show we've talked a lot about that in terms of halides versus LEDs and how certain people feel very strongly about those. Go ahead, Dong.
Oh, sorry for my cat. My cat just won't leave me alone.
Oh,
so well, I'm for sure is not going back to metal halide. Absolutely sure. The reason is that I used to have about 10 or dozen or something like that, 250 watt metal halide in this room. So I have to stagger them the timer, because when they fire up, and that moment when a metal halide ball fire up, it draws a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah.
So you have a couple of the metal halide fire up at the same time, that circuit breaker may trip. And another thing is about the heat. Well, metal halide definitely grow beautiful corals, no doubt about it. But in practicality, I used to have 90 degrees in dead winter inside this room with all this metal halide cooking. And so even though it's a great light, but it's not practical for me. So now I have LED and T5. So that way, but even then, without heating this room, actually actively heating it, this room is heating 80 degrees during daytime in winter, just from all the light I have there. So,
So what do you guys think about Pasadena Reef's comment here? Why can't we replicate metal halides in a more efficient way where we've got self-driving cars?
I'll take that one.
I don't know, bit-ups and quantum computers. So are we already able to do that?
of course, that we've
happening
done that for a long, long time, right?
Well, I think when
remember
you're
that my
Tullio
I'm sorry.
shaking his head no.
go ahead. No,
The spectrometer doesn't lie. The spectrums are different. I am not saying one is better or not, but I will say scientifically, I've demonstrated this to Moat Marine Labs. I've demonstrated this to numerous scientists. The spectrums are different. That's really it in a nutshell. People, you know, and again,
I think it's more than that, Tullio, than just the spectrum.
Well, feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, I didn't know if so Tullio, here's where I'm at. I think there's two aspects to halide which make it unique. The first one is that it is a point source of heated gases, a mixture of gases that will produce a very unique spectrum, which I agree with you. The spectrum of it is hard to recreate, but I think the equal problematic is a lot of almost all of them, all LEDs are made to fit in a box, right? So we're not making huge, massive reflectors. So I have given up on recreating halides with in terms of the spectrum, because the technology for a lot of the UV just isn't there if you're trying to do this economically. But here's the thing: when you don't have a multi-angular reflector that is taking the source of light, shooting it down your tank, and you don't have those different angles, you cannot recreate halide with a small pendant light. It has to have secondary optics. And so I will say that in testing coverage, shadowing, and output, you know, I'll still put my Atlas against anything. And I think it does recreate everything except for the UVB and UVA of halide, and some infrared. And, you know, all those are important in a different, unique way. So, you know, that's where I'm going to put that. Is you cannot do a perfect recreation because it's hard to make a true point source of the spectrum you need. But it's also because LED lights have turned into a lot of, you know, small lenses, for example, that are focusing light down into your tank versus a large reflector. So what I'll say is aluminum reflectors are still very useful, and application can make it more like a halide. Because Tullio, I share your comments, though. There's nothing that will actually recreate a halide in its entirety right now through LED tech.
But the question also is, should you be trying to recreate metal halides, or should you be targeting the spectrums that are proven to be absorbed by corals and by the biosymbiotes within coral tissues? I mean, like, for example, you know, are you trying to replicate metal halide because that works when metal halide is very power inefficient? By being power inefficient, you're basically wasting a lot of energy on spectrums that may not necessarily be doing much for corals, right? with LEDs, you could target specific spectrums. You could target violets. You could target indigos right around the 430 nanometer spectrum. And you can make your light heavily towards like that growth spectrum and the colors that make your corals colors pop, as opposed to, you know, having all this extra stuff in there that may or may not be useful. But Luca does bring up a good point with the optics and reflectors. I mean, a lot of lights are, you know, kind of getting smaller and smaller and smaller in terms of like, you know, how the LEDs are spread out. I mean, that is kind of like a big factor, and it's nice to have like a larger LED cluster, larger lenses as part of it. You know, the other thing is like on your tank, for example, Dong, and also on mine, you can't really see it because I have it like straight out parallel with my meridian. I have an edge bar on the front. So if I had like, you know, if I was targeting my colonies towards the center of the tank, I just tilt that in a little bit. And then instead of having shadowing from a lot of like top down light, I have light coming in on the side at different angles. So it's definitely a factor. Well, I mean, when I first started too, you know, metal halides were, in fact, metal halides are the reason that I started building LED lights. I had them in my bedroom as a kid, and I was trying to grow corals. So I got a couple of metal halide pendants. I had two 250 watt radium metal halide bulbs, and our air conditioner went out in the summer. So I had a controller set up that would basically cut power when you hit a certain temperature threshold. So the metal halides would be on for like 30 minutes to an hour, and then the controller would shut them off. So I was just getting no light. Yeah, but that's a whole different tangent.
You know what? Let's address it this way, because I hear people referring to power, okay? It's called laws of conservation. Power is not wasted. The difference is with a metal halide lamp, see, the whole marketing thing with LEDs primarily focuses in the visible spectrum. So therefore, they appear more efficient because they're looking at visible light. When you factor in UV, when you factor in the longer and the shorter wavelengths, because metal halides produce much more light beyond just visible spectrum. When you add those up, the power factor actually starts to shift. In fact, I noticed one of your sponsors, Polo Reef, Keith, you can ask Andrew Sandler. We did a straight up comparison where we took watt for watt halides with a spectrometer and compared them to another light, and people were actually able to see the differences. But the power is not wasted. The difference is the power ends up from a halide producing UV, or it could be far red and infrared. And again, depending on your system, those things could be good or bad. I recently had a conversation with Michael Paletta, where a hobbyist was using a reptile light on their corals because it was producing UV, and they were saying that they're getting more growth. They're getting more growth with the use of this reptile light. Well, that's because of the broader spectrum of the reptile light, and the additional color is from the UV and the protective pigments. But these days, the trend is blue aquariums, and hey, that's totally cool. I get the fluorescence thing, but that's kind of the trend. And so therefore, halides are not a good light for that type of system. But if you do want to grow corals, if your specific goal is to grow corals, it's still hard to beat halides. In fact, I won't mention them here, but one of the major coral suppliers to the industry recently purchased a bunch of metal halide systems from us because they get better growth from their SPS. Now they'll color them up under different lights and do all of that other stuff, and that's all well and fine. But they don't care about that at that point. They want maximum growth, and these guys have access to any LED imaginable. In fact, they were using none of our company's lights, by the way, guys, but they were using another popular company, and they had access to everything they needed. And when they did their own comparison to what they did years ago and everything else like that, for growing corals. They actually have a section of their coral system which is under metal halides. And I know Chris from ACI is also a big fan of metal halides. And again, Chris can run whatever lights he wants. So it's just like everything else. There's a tool for everything. You know, it's not one light fits all. In fact, my biggest disappointment with the industry is because of zealous marketing. It's hard to get T5s anymore. It's hard to get even halides anymore. These were choices. These were options for hobbyists. And these are proven options because like your Jason Foxes and your Cherry Corals and many of the OGs, they did fabulous under T5s and LEDs, all these different combinations. Now pretty much all we have left is LED. But the good news is I am this close to something that I would consider being a viable halide replacement using LEDs. I know I've spoken to Chris from ACI about it, but it's still very difficult to replicate a halide in its entirety, like Lucas said, because there's so many other factors involved.
Yeah, and I think one thing I really wanted to pop in there, Logan, I loved I don't know if we need all of the halide spectrum, and Tullio has talked about, everyone has talked about this, and what I will say is I have a problem with a lot of the LEDs in the market, because if you really follow what makes corals grow, it's not 450 and 450 only, and most fixtures peak at 450. But to your point, there are greens that help with photo regulation that are not present enough in a lot of LEDs. And we're talking people that are on this live stream, we have customer service, we have warranties, we have all of that. And yet you go pick something off Amazon, you know, there's going to be lacking things, of course, and the optics might be bad or whatever. But I would say that halides, it's important to say that all lighting is applicable for growing coral, and there's no right or wrong answer. I think, to sum it up, and I'm also looking at the comments, probably everyone on here, guys, most likely people don't want to deal with bulbs anymore. Oh God, did I put my glass shield on because my 2-year-old toddler is waddling around? And with LED, you don't get any of that. T5, you break a bulb, technically you're supposed to sweep it all up. You're supposed to have a mercury test, which honestly, I broke some. I broke a bunch of them, Logan, to your point, and Tullio, like these T5s and stuff are hard to get. I broke a bunch of them. I read what I had to do. I had to go clean it up. I had to get testing. I think people want to use LEDs because people don't want to deal with that stuff. And then what's cool about it is you have different emerging LED technologies that all have a place. So I don't think you need halides to carry on coral growth. I also own 120 halide bulbs and different reflectors, and I study them, and they're interesting. So I would open up to the audience as like, what do you guys want to chat about? If halides, okay, this halide thing, they're saying it's boring or whatever, throw something at us, because this is good conversation, you know? I know that. Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to add one thing, Luca.
Yeah.
And this is something often not really addressed, okay? And I will, you know what, I'll point it at my products. LEDs degrade. They do not last forever. So even if you buy a $500 fixture or a $600 fixture, whatever that may be, in 5, 6 years, whatever it is, because even if the LEDs don't fail, the components that drive them will, okay? You basically have to buy a new fixture. One advantage with a bulb, with a metal halide bulb, see, your LED fixture will constantly degrade from the moment you turn it on till its end of life. It's simple physics, okay? The advantage with a bulb is when you replace that bulb, you are in fact restoring for the most part, the initial luminous output of that source. And when you look at the cost of ownership, it works out to be about the same. And the problem with halides is Logan, you mentioned this when you said you run your fixtures at 20%, and that's great. That means you don't need 1,500 watts of light. See, the problem with halides were in the old days, they were used completely wrong. Keith, you and I had this conversation with LEDs. We learned about light distribution. We learned about less being more. We have learned a lot about the use of LEDs. But in terms of corals and light, I've measured light underwater, in the ocean. Jamie Craig's has posted data compared to my data. And at 15, 20 feet, light is not blue, guys. The full spectrum is still there.
Yep.
The full spectrum is still there. And that's a big misconception. So again, I'm not saying anything's wrong with fluorescence and promoting fluorescence and the cool, awesome colors that these reef tanks exhibit. And I think that's fantastic. But for natural corals, and of course, I do a lot of work with coral restoration. For natural corals, these corals need more than just blue light. Some of them.
Of course.
Yeah. They do need more than just blue light.
And that's like one of the options that I have is, that's why I call it the shallow reef. It's got more white
Right.
LEDs in it. The original layout is tailored to how people are using their lights in general, but that's why I'm continually adapting and, adding new stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But to
So,
say,
Tullio,
the lifespan of LEDs, if you take care of your fixture, you make sure that the fans are working, the dust it's not covered in dust. Salt creep is the number one thing. If you make sure your light's not getting constantly splashed, wipe it down with a damp towel every now and then. I mean, I've got Photon V2s that are out there that was released in like late 2015, early 2016. A lot of those fixtures, they're still working and they're still plenty powerful to grow corals because your average user is only running them at like half power. And I mean, if you read the Cree data sheets, because we're running Cree XTEs and XPEs in there, according to Cree, after about 10 years of use at like 12 hours a day, you should only really be losing about 5% of your overall power. But so it's really not that significant of a loss. Like an old LED fixture can still grow corals. And I still have parts for photons available. Like if a driver goes out, that's one part. I mean, typically what I see is damage over the years from corrosion. You might have a bad trace on the LED board. That's not something that can't be fixed.
Now, Logan, and I'm not arguing with your data. The problem with Cree's data, the same thing with Luxian, because I come from the Luxian family. I was a Luxian certified manufacturer, so we can talk data sheets inside and out. Those data sheets are in idealized conditions, meaning ambient temperature, thermal resistance, everything is spot on. The moment we take these devices, we put them in the fixtures, there's those things to be accounted for. And many times people's environments are going to be 80 degrees, 85. There's a lot of other factors. So even at 10 years, there will be considerable degradation in anybody's system. And I'm not saying yours, I'm saying mine, I'm saying any LED system in general. That's why they have what they call usable life. In fact, for commercial applications, when they do accelerated testing, they're looking at 20%, they're looking at different stages of the LED degradation, because again, depending on applications for safety and other things like that, is it still meeting its luminous target after X number of years? I remember when I first started with LEDs, they said they'd last for 100,000 hours. Well, we know that's not true. We know that's not true now. So again, it's a matter of, I'm not saying your systems don't last a very long time, but LEDs do in fact degrade.
If I could throw one thing in there, guys, I like the conversation, and I do think that design plays a big part of longevity. Logan, so I have always liked your lights. Okay. I've always liked Tullio's lights. I grew up as a hobbyist, but I do only design lights that can be washed down. So that's near and dear to my heart. That does not mean that Tullio or Logan's approach is bad. There's different needs and aspects. And I will tell you, Logan, one of the reasons I wish I could put fans on my stuff is because for extreme abuse cases, I know we all get customers that are like, yeah, bro. I mean, I wrap these lights on the top of them with insulation because I want to do. Why'd they fail? So when I have all ambient cooled lights, that's my jam. There is that risk, and I have found in my testing, Logan. I don't know about you and Tullio, like what you guys think, but when you underdrive your LEDs, you're bringing that junction temperature way down. And if you build your boards correctly with the right thermal paste and the right thickness of aluminum, you can really, really enhance the life of the LED and mitigate the degradation. I do agree with Tullio. Nothing lasts forever. However, I would like to think that we can go more than 5 years with an LED. And that was my thoughts on those discussions.
I mean,
And just
all of my
I
lights
think I
have always
want to-
been like.
go ahead, Dong. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I have well, because I repair LED lights all the time, and for other people, and I do it myself. So I have a real life example there. I've been using all sorts of LED light. Basically, well, I even have one of the Lucas Mazo Blue sitting right there. So I got all the LED light, test them out, use them for long term. So I agree with you, Tullio, about the degradation. For example, and my Radeon Gen 4, it degrades probably 30% in 1 year. My AI Hydra degrades significantly as well. So I think that, but I do have one of Logan's lights. That light is manufactured 2018, so I got it there, and still running today. Over there, I check them frequently with PAR. So I probably see about 5% PAR lost. And I have a friend who is a retired IBM engineer working on LED, whatever electronic, that kind of thing. So he came here and purchased one of the Reef Breeder light. I asked him why. I have a Radeon here, I have a Hydra here. So he said he purchased that light because that is using the 48-volt power supply. So he told me that when your LED chips are getting the same power, when your voltage is higher, the current lower to achieve the same wattage. And then when the current lower, it generate much less heat because the heat is proportional to the current of the chips. So I think that the major difference, what I've from your real life example, is that the Logan's fixture definitely run much cooler. So even that guy, yeah, basically it's like coal. So with the very large heat sink, with active cooling, as well as the 48-volt power supply, I think that's the reason that it lasts longer.
Well, I'd be curious. I have a brand new photon I could send you if you want to do a PAR comparison on those. I have one that's never been opened, brand new. You want to see how much
I have brand new photon sitting there as backup.
I could even bring my spectrometer and see if the spectrum shifted. That'd be kind of an interesting experiment to really
let me
do apples to apples.
Let me throw my opinion out there, because I think a lot of people that have been following my reef keeping journey know that I was a metal halide junkie up until about 5 years ago, and then I started with the GHL Mitras, the LEDs, and I'll show you a live shot of my tank right now, one of my tanks. So this is that's my Peninsula tank that's running under LEDs. That's chock full of SPS Aquaculture, and that's a lighting spectrum that mimics 20K 400 watt radiant bulbs. Actually, it was Jim Telegram that came up with that spectrum for me. So thanks, Jim. I think you're watching. So I think my question is, a lot of people that are in the chat, that are in the hobby, have very strong opinions about LEDs, very strong opinions about, halides. And I think every tank is different. And I think there's no doubting that LEDs can grow corals very, very well. But I think my question to you guys, and maybe Tullio, you're the one that could best answer this. Are there certain use cases that are just going to be best for metal halide lighting, like coral farms or public aquariums? You know, is that really you know, with those applications, are halides really going to provide the best results for those folks? But there are a lot of coral farms out there that use LEDs and do a damn good job in growing corals.
I can start with that one because I deal with a lot of, so for example, there's a lot of public aquariums, very well-known public aquariums, that still do use halides, and they use LEDs. They have all kinds of LEDs. A lot of times, oftentimes it's with animals. See, when we talk about spectrum, there's more to the picture than, let's say, 450 nanometer, and I believe Luca or whatever had mentioned that, and they're absolutely correct. So many animals, not necessarily corals, but many animals actually require UV. This is per the AZA. This is not speculation. This is per the AZA. They need UV. So therefore, a lot of facilities will, in fact, use halides for those type of things. When you're dealing with wild corals, you have to be careful. Not that LEDs can't be used, but you need to preserve the natural zooanthily found in the animal, because you want to preserve that natural coral. Now, with LEDs, sometimes we know corals can sometimes change colors. Now, you've heard me say, even in my talks, that for most hobbyist setups, halides are probably not the choice for them. And LEDs are a great solution for that. But there are absolutely, still till this day, Steinhardt Aquarium, Georgia Aquarium, I can go right down the list, Baltimore Aquarium, I can just keep going, that still do in fact use halides because of the UV and the other components of the spectra, you know, of the spectra produced by metal halide lamps.
So I have a question for you, Tullio. So you said when you measure the spectrum in the ocean, when you get 15 feet deep, so you still see the full spectrum. So here comes the interesting point, is that when I working with one of the LED manufacturer back then, so when they're comparing the halide, I gave them 20K radium bulb. So besides the UV part, there's also another part, is the near IR.
Yes.
So the near IR is supposed to hit the coral field F. That's what their conclusion is, that the LED just doesn't have that region, the near IR, the 660 nanometer, it doesn't count. You need to be pushed a little bit further away, further IR that way to hit the coral field F, because 660 only hit the edge of the coral field F. So could that be a possibility that we can put some near IR that little bit wavelength, little bit longer than 660 on the LED to see if actually that can help mimicking the metal halides, the growth? Is that possible? Because coral field F is real.
Yes, it is. It is actually possible. It is actually possible. And in fact, the Hydros XHO, actually does exactly that. That's what we've been focusing on. We've been focusing on broadening the spectrum. And that's something that's they can decide to use it or not. They can decide to use it or not. But again, different applications for different systems. But the one thing I would like to address, Don, before we move on, you made the comment about voltage, okay? You are correct. The higher the voltage, the less amps. This is, again, basic physics. But it doesn't mean that a 36-volt system or even a 24-volt system cannot operate very efficiently. It depends on how you have the LEDs arranged. There's any number of ways. In fact, Luca, you touched on it as well about underdriving the LEDs. And I think it's fair to say that Logan, Luca, myself, we all underdrive our LEDs because we're smarter than that. You know, we know that by limiting them, we will extend their usable life. So again,
Yeah.
it's not, if anybody's ever watched any of my lighting talks, I really hate to talk in any type of absolutes, because there's always going to be an application or an exception. It really just depends on the situation and the application.
Yeah.
I remember that many years ago that, well, Logan, you saw one of the LED light actually can swap the LED chips, right?
Yeah, I had one of those in my product lineup quite some time ago.
So right now, the ATI Stratton, one of their selling point is that they can replace the LED board, user replacement. They have a lifetime warranty, for God's sake. Lifetime warranty. That's what I heard, okay? But I'm too poor to own a Strattons. Not rich enough. So, but I think that's an interesting idea, is that make the whole LED board user replaceable and economically affordable.
I mean, yeah, Meridians, you could swap them out. We're working on a custom layout feature. I mean, now you do have to do the whole board instead of just an individual LED. But
so is it possible to just like slide in and pull out?
Yeah, there's just like a small handful of screws holding it in place, and then you just unplug it.
Unplug it and put it in.
Yeah. So that probably will solve the longevity of thing. And
well, here's the thing, and Luca and Logan, you can address this as well. LEDs and electronics, just period. They can be sensitive devices. Electrostatic charges, all these other different things. You don't often want people servicing their own equipment, because even with best intentions, stuff can happen. Static electricity, any number of things. They handle the board incorrectly. It's in an idealized world, yes, that'd be great to just replace them. But again, unless you're going to replace the drivers and everything else that goes with them, by the time the LEDs have gone bad, you can bet that the rest of the electronics need serviced as well. It's like when a headlight goes out in your car. If you replace one headlight, what's going to happen to the second headlight? It's going to go out shortly thereafter, because its use is basically the same.
I mean, really, the majority of issues I see are with environmental stresses. Is usually when I see, if a light gets sent into me and a couple channels around, probably 99% of the time, I could see salt spray on the outside, and it's been allowed to collect and collect and collect until finally a trace goes out. And then I have to repair the trace. The LEDs themselves, though, I mean, they're usually okay. The drivers, I usually don't have to replace those unless those are corroded as well. As far as user serviceability goes, I mean, I sell app kits like for the original Photons, like they used to come with a wireless remote. I'm still making and selling kits for those. Like, people are still upgrading from the remote to this day. I mean, sold hundreds and hundreds of those kits, and very, very low failure rate. Very small amount of people who weren't able to successfully install their board. As far as like the static discharge goes, I did very long time ago. I had like one batch that had something with like the violet LEDs, like the 415 nanometers. Had a couple of those go out. Long since fixed, but that was like due to electrostatic discharge. But the circuit boards themselves, I mean, they're aluminum, and it's a little bit, I mean, yeah, I like to use electrostatic ESD safe mats and all that stuff, but really you don't have to. I mean, I haven't seen it lead to any long-standing issues. The LEDs themselves, I mean, they're 5-watt chips. We're not talking about super small components that are really that sensitive. Hand soldering them every now and then isn't going to cause too many issues. But you're right. To a point, like if you do it again and again and again, then eventually, I mean, it's going to start affecting the lifespan for sure.
No, but for example, take a capacitor. Google the usable life of a capacitor. It's absolutely shorter than that of an LED. So there's different electronic components oftentimes incorporated into the drivers and other things like that and that's where they're going to fail. It's not that they're cheap
And
components.
I get that.
Yeah.
Probably the most commonly replaced part would be like a power supply. I mean,
Right.
that's the
Yeah.
workhorse, right? That's got to take
Yeah.
AC voltage, convert it to DC, and keep it stable at 48 volts, 24/7, 365. It's always plugged in, right? And then every morning when your lights turn on, the power demand goes up, and it has to hold steady throughout the day and go down. So yeah, those get replaced, but I mean, same thing with metal halides. I mean, they have ballasts. The ballasts go bad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the difference is you don't have to replace the bulbs every 6 to 12 months. And
So,
my 10-year figure of like, saying, hey, there's photons out there that are like 10 plus years old is like photons that are over reef tanks and running and still operating. Not talking about, I guess I couldn't say specifically how many of those had a part replaced or not, but the majority of them, not really.
Yeah, I'm going to just pipe in here. I think this is, I don't know if this is what the people really want to hear, but I have a different, my approach is I seal everything. So this is epoxy sealed. This is glass, because I think glass lasts a lot longer and has better transmission than acrylic, and it doesn't scratch. So there's all different approaches. And, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? So I use constant current drivers, which can have voltage up to 208 volts. I don't know if that's any better. I do know if you use constant current, you don't have to use many resistors, which then means more power goes to power into your tank, as an example. And, I think there's a lot of approaches. And yeah, I'm going to be honest. If you guys remember my old marketing stuff, I don't advertise. I don't do any of that. It's all word of mouth. But on Instagram, I was throwing my lights in pools and plugging them in for 4 days straight. If they can't survive that, I'm not selling.
The question is, were you swimming in that pool?
All right, so Keith, I did touch my finger in there quite a bit. I was also checking for stray voltage. This prototype I have that I keep showing you, because it's a smaller light, but it's a general direction I'm going in. This will do the throw it in a pool and plug it in test, because I'm opposite. Logan, I think it's great that you service your lights. I think customer service is awesome too. I totally get where you're at. I'm like, I don't want any of that. So I'm going to make this thing so I could, if a burglar comes in, I could kill him with this thing, just smack him on the head. I can shoot this. My Atlas, I actually took one to the range and we shot it.
A metal halide ballast is not going to, that's going to hurt too.
So anyways, I think there's a lot of things. I was wondering, I saw some interesting comments. Greg Carroll made a really interesting comment saying, hey guys, you all make a light bar. Why is yours better? I think that would be an interesting conversation. But I'm just asking, can we not talk about capacitors anymore?
All right, we want to change the topic a little bit there.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could talk about with, you have designers of LEDs on here, so there's so much you could talk about. Lens design, what material do you like?
Well,
to
let's
put your
talk
lights
about
in, all
lenses,
that
because
kind
I
of
know
stuff.
somebody did have a question about lenses. But first, let's tackle Greg's question in terms of light bars. I mean, all three of you guys manufacture light bars. What's the difference, and how do you, how does a customer kind of sift through the best options for light bars out there?
Yeah, I
Who wants
mean,
to
I
go first.
think, for example, like with my system, I kind of designed them, differently, in that they integrate with a main light. So you have the Meridian, and then you have the edge bar that goes on the front and the back. Again, a little hard to see here. You might be able to make out the clusters. I'm kind of pointing my own screen. You might be able to make out some of the LED clusters here, because I have the kind of parallel.
Yep.
But they can be tilted in and out. I mean, there's tilting mounts. So basically, one of the key designs with the Meridian edge bar is that they can be daisy chained to the Meridian, right? So you can get a larger power supply and have two edge bars and a Meridian running off of one cord. So for some folks, like myself, cord space is at premium. So that's a big plus. I mean, the other main thing with them is, I mean, that 4-foot bar there, they're 30 watts a cluster, peak power if you're running them at full tilt. So that's 120 watts of power if I was to crank that thing up. And then it's got 2 control channels, so you could dial in the color, and then it's fully app powered. So everything's programmed through our Reef Breeders app, but it's also got a built-in manual controller. So you could go ahead and toggle on the manual mode. The manual timer even has like an actual timer built in. It doesn't have a clock, but you can tell it to, turn on at the time you want it to turn on. It'll ramp up for an hour and then ramp down. So there's a little bit of limitations with the manual controller, but you can just dial it in, turn a knob, push a button, and it'll do an 8, 10, or 12-hour day.
Well, I will say this. I'll say this to Keith. For example, with the Hydros XHO, what we've decided to do is kind of blur the line between a modular system and, in fact, what we would call a light bar. Obviously, we've had them at RAP and what have you. They will. I know people are saying when they're coming out. They're actually coming out very soon. That's the good news. But what we've also done, like Luca was saying, is it's got multiple lunar channels. There's multiple different features. In fact, you can use it with the Hydros controller. You can use it standalone. It's actually the only Wi-Fi. It's got its own brain in it. So it's actually a Hydros device unto itself. So even if you don't have a Hydros controller or a system, you can use the light and all the features and everything else like that. And again, listen, guys, at the end of the day, light is light. It really is. 450 nanometer, these different wavelengths and these different things. What you're really looking for, like Luca was mentioning, is customer service. Things like that, that you can reach out to people. So, for example, Logan, Luca, and myself, if you really needed to, you can get a hold of any one of our companies and we can service or we can take care of your customers. That's the difference between buying something blindly, let's say off the internet, or buying from any one of us three, is that you also get the customer support to go along with it. And oftentimes that's what, that's what really makes a product, is the customer service and the customer support that goes behind.
Yep.
So,
I guess I would throw
I think that's for also. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I try not to butt in too much, but I would like to answer the question, my friend Dong. So I like the responses that both the gentlemen had. And again, you can see that we're in different spaces. So my bar, I only use Meanwhile drivers because I think they are the absolute best. I use a special one that's IP67 rated. I have quad core technology, and I am big on this. All my product lines are moving towards this, and I think this is a game changer. So when you have a light bar, Keith and Dong, and each LED needs to be a different spectrum. All the bases of it, you can see it in here. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but every single LED that I'm putting into fixtures, that's not my Atlas, because that's a different technology platform, and it's pretty unique in the industry, actually. It's 4 core, and they're 4 different spectrums. And why is that a big deal? Is because when you have a repeating sequence of 5 or 6 light lenses, you're going to get a lot of disco. When you take 4 spectrums and put it into one chip, number one, it's expensive. It's very expensive. But number two, it's giving those multiple spectrums in one chip, so your repeating sequence becomes very small. And it also allows you to really make some very curtailed spectrums. So I would say that the overall, what has made Quanta lights grow and do well is probably the light bars. And it is that they're built like a tank. They have a lot of technology in a more basic package, and they're simple to use, and they last a long time. So I'm pretty proud of that. I don't push 120 watts, Logan. That's pretty awesome. Props to you, my friend. I push about 80 watts out of those. Yeah, that's the commonality that Tullio said is, look at these 3 people on here. We do customer service, and that's what we're going to do. And I learned stuff from Tullio when I talked to him. I'm learning stuff from Logan. And at the end of the day, it's all about the hobbyist. And for me, I'm not going to spend money on advertising. It's word of mouth, or my products aren't good, and then I'm not going to make it. So I'm all in on the hobbyist, spreading that and seeing the difference. So that's my roundup for that one. What were you going to say, Don?
Oh, what I'm trying to say is that 3 of you are small companies, and then as small companies, you guys have outstanding customer service. I think that is the very important thing. So when a company gets really, really huge, you got 2 weeks wait time. Trust me, 2 weeks wait time. If somebody call you back, it's great. You're lucky. So, but for you guys definitely as a small companies, I think the customer service is so important, so good. So yeah, you can try to, right now, 2 weeks wait time for a certain company you're lucky actually. If you put in a ticket for one major LED manufacturer, you just a blown power supply, wait 2 weeks. Somebody can email you back. Yeah, hallelujah. So that is a huge difference in terms of end user service. So I think
there's a lot of passion about lights, because I'm looking at some of the chat here, and I could see some very passionate comments, some that are kind of towing the line here. So folks, let's be civil, okay? And let's keep it in line.
Well, actually, Keith, I'd like to address some of these. Russell Adams, 2003, Quanta ripped off Refi. No, Refi uses the same spectrum on their quad core. I am the first to make an independently powered, independently spectrum quad core. So I do agree that, Keith, we got to keep this, but it's fine. These statements are fine. And then someone saying, well, quad core, dual core is irrelevant, quad core. If you're telling me you don't want more spectrum out of one lens, I think we can all agree that's not marketing, that's actual physics. We're now, so to Tullio's point, how do you make a metal halide more like a metal halide? You have to have more spectrums closer together. So anyways, you get this all the time as a small company, Keith. A lot of people are very passionate about the big name companies. They want to badmouth the small ones. They want to shoot you down. It's fine. It's fine. I think all of us deal with that, and it makes us stronger, because to Dong, to your point, why shouldn't we have good customer service? The size of the company shouldn't dictate customer service. I think that's an expectation that customers should have for anything that you're paying a good amount of money for. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents on those couple topics. And Keith, what's your thoughts about the comments? Did you see this with other types of stuff on your streams?
This has been especially colorful comments here in the chat. I know people have very strong opinions about lighting, and I think I saw somebody make a comment earlier. It's just make your choice in terms of lighting, stick with it, and if your corals are happy, then you're good. I think a lot of times people get very it almost gets personal in terms of lighting, and when somebody says, hey, this is the best lighting, or that's the best lighting, it might tend to get people upset. Like I said, my whole journey, I had metal halides for 25 years or whatnot, and now I've been certainly very happy with the LEDs. I've seen all types of tanks with different types of lighting have great success. So it's not just about the lighting in terms of that's the difference. There's a lot of other things that go into making a great successful reef tank. I saw comments about there's the chemistry and I mean there's just so many variables in play, and that's what makes it kind of tough to kind of have this sort of debate about lighting in terms of this is better than that or what have you. But I would just say that I think we as reef keepers should just kind of focus on our own tanks and maybe not be so caught up with other stuff out there. I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but it's been a very colorful conversation, and I'm enjoying myself.
Can I jump in real quickly, Keith?
Yeah.
You hit on a really, really good point. So listen, again, if you go back to any of my talks, I tell you, you can grow corals, LEDs, halides, T5s, whatever you're going to use, it all works, okay? Oftentimes, people will blame their lighting. See, when you make changes in your lighting, it can take weeks for your corals to show any type of significant response. So if you're always changing lighting schedules and doing all these other things, that's not always recommended. Try something, do one thing at a time, so everything you do is traceable. If you make 5 different changes, you have no idea. What really affected what, because you changed 5 different things. So do that. But the point is, oftentimes it's something else that might be affecting the aquaria and not the light. But many times people will I see you shaking your head, but it's really true. I've troubleshot.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I agree with you about this. Yeah. So then I frequently get questions say, hey, my coral looks crappy. Should I adjust my spectrum? Say no. Find out what caused that. It's not just suddenly adjust spectrum. And also that one, I see the most frequently thing is happening is that one coral piss off, not happy, and then the reefer start adjusting the whole spectrum. I said, you're going to piss off 99% of your coral just for that one little thing? So you eventually come out, oh, my tank is not doing well. I said, well, don't change your lighting. And forget it.
You hit on the point there, Dong. It's like people just tinker too much, and it's not just with the lighting.
Too much.
It's not just with the lighting. It's with a lot of stuff.
Oh, exactly. Actually, I think the LED manufacturer should take the Apple approach, the Macintosh approach. You cannot do a freaking thing on it. Give you this spectrum, stick to it, and end of story.
I gotta tell you that. You want to know a terrible joke I tell Dong? I tell my customers, oh, it's probably the salt, but it's kind of funny because it is such a matrix. But I think customer service, you walk them through that, you talk to them, you help them out best you can. And that's where you kind of bring it back together. I had a guy that goes, hey, I bought your light bars and they're not working good. And I was like, how long have you had them in the tank? He's like, 3 days. I really don't like them. What don't you like about them? Well, my corals are all green. I'm like, your corals are green because you have green corals. I don't know what to say about that. And I said, give them 6. But Dong, I said, give it 6 weeks. And he did actually email me back. And he's like, dude, I'm seeing different colors. I'm like, imagine a human. Hey, start working out. Hey, 3 days, I'm not jacked and I don't have 500 pounds of muscle. You got to do some stuff for a while to get huge and stuff. So I always liken it to like going on a diet or becoming a bodybuilder. They don't become bodybuilders in 5 weeks. So the fact that corals can adapt in under 12 weeks is pretty amazing. That's pretty cool stuff.
So, all right, here's another question from Ari, Idaho Reef. What do you guys love most about your lights? What drove you to choose those spectrums? And what is something you're currently working on to improve your lights in the future? Who wants to tackle that one first?
I'll go first. I'll go first in this one. So I actually love the conversation because the Atlas is getting an upgrade and I'm putting past 700 nanometers into that. So I'm very passionate about doing the research for the spectrums. I have a lot of violet. It's not an easy light to work with, as we all know. So I have a very white light. I have a Reef Crest daylight, which is your kind of expected light, and then I have my Mezzo Blues with my blue light. But I'm trying to push people to more of a full spectrum, at least in the middle of the day. And I'm with Tullio. I'm working on UV. I can't find any studies that say it's really, really needed for corals, but I'm interested. So mine is coral first. So none of my lights will ever have a peak at 450 or in the blue spectrum. Because I'm going to go back to Tullio talking about LED lights burning wild corals. That's if you have a peaky thing. that this animal's not used to. But when you have everything from 400 nanometer through 530, which enables photoregulation, which is mainly missing from a lot of fixtures, you don't have those problems. So I don't see that problems with my customers because I am specifically spreading that out and really going for it. So that's my design philosophy. And then from spectrums, and then, you know, my lighting philosophy, it's simple. So I don't make them where you can change the spectrum. I make it so you can change the intensity. So my new light that's coming out, it's gonna be a big panel light. You have two channels. You have a quote unquote blue and a quote unquote white. My white has everything from blue, UV, cyan, green, and full spectrum. My blue channel, quote unquote blue channel, has the right balance of violet and blue. You don't choose what to give your corals. You can just choose the intensity. So that's kind of where I'm at and I'm on the simple side. You know what? I'm not saying anyone's light is wrong. I love the Meridian. It looks beautiful. I like Tullio's lights. He kind of invented the category, to be honest with you. So there's no wrong answer. That's just the path I chose.
Logan, you want to jump in? I'll jump in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I love the most about the Meridians is the customizability. Now, I will say with the original Spectrum, I basically designed it so that the average reefer would be running every color channel at the same intensity. But I left it open so that you can adjust that. You know, some folks want to turn down the cool blues. I personally turn them up a little bit because it shifts the color spectrum. I did remove certain colors and replace them actually. So like with the photons, for example, there was point source greens, 520 nanometer, and point source reds. What I found was a lot of folks didn't quite understand how to use them, and they would, you know, run them too high, which greatly affects the look of your tank. If you take a point source green LED light and you turn it on and you combine that with red and you combine it with blue, well, now you have white light. And now your entire, at least what you see, has shifted. It's not as powerful to the corals, because you're only talking about a couple of LEDs here. So I got rid of those colors because they weren't necessarily useful. What I did instead was I added a warm white LED. Now, that's kind of the closest thing you have to black body radiation coming from an LED, in that you have a phosphor coating. And that phosphor coating then projects out, you know, the majority of the full spectrum. And it's not perfect, but that does include a lot of those ambers, greens, and a little bit of red. So that's my philosophy, is using broader spectrum white LEDs as opposed to, and that has been for a long time. I mean, I've been using the Meridians going all the way back to, rather the neutral whites going all the way back to the value fixture. I mean, kind of when I was in the DIY community was, you know, we discovered pretty early on that cool whites aren't all that useful. But really, I mean, the most important part of the Meridian spectrum is that it's quite heavy in the violet range. Even with the photons, which had quite a bit of violet in them, you have kind of this big shoulder where it peaks around 415, 420 nanometers, and then it drops off a little bit and then picks back up right at the cool blue spectrum, or the royal blue spectrum of 450 nanometers. What we did with the Meridians is we added a unique spectrum that I haven't really seen out there, running a bunch of different lights under a spectrometer. We added indigos, which have a spectral peak right around 436 nanometers. We rounded up to 440. But that fills in that gap between the 416 nanometer violets and the royal blues. So you have like the full gamut of violet spectrum. And another thing we're doing a mid-season refresh. So we're going to be adding, we have a channel with 2405 nanometers in there right now, so the near UVs. We're going to be going a little bit deeper into the UV spectrum with 390s. So that'll help a little bit, give an even broader UV spectrum.
Yep.
And then
That's
lot
awesome.
of it we're working on for improvements, that sort of stuff. I mean, the app is a big driver. We have a mid-season refresh with some updates coming to the app, and also to how the hardware is controlled, and also to our daisy chaining feature. We had a pretty exciting change with that kind of makes it easier to daisy chain everything. But I think this is mostly about, the question was mostly about spectrum, so I think I've run the course on that.
Nice.
Well, and then I'll jump in here, and I actually like this question because when working with public aquariums, I've often been asked by veterinarians and other people, what am I basing my research on for the spectrum? And I smile at this because I walk them outside and I point to the sun. See, this data is available to anybody. That's the funny part about this. It's not a mystery, the spectrum of the sun, the spectrum of response. And again, when I say wild corals, again, with the coral restoration stuff, it's different than maybe getting and not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, like I said, with aquarium corals, when you put corals under, heavy blue light, they do change. The zooanthily changes, color changes. I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but I'm just saying there are reasons, for those kinds of things. But in terms of what I've always, listen, always start with natural. You can adjust from there. Logan, you're moving in that direction, obviously, and Luca, you are as well, because here we are now encouraging people to use white light, right? Because we're trying to broaden these spectrums, okay? And that's where we will see those kind of things. So that's where I've always, whether it's halides or LEDs, whatever, I've always promoted the use of, other wavelengths of light, if you will. And, white is not, that's the other interesting thing here is, again, we blur between color and spectrum. So Logan, you mentioned a spectrometer. You and I use spectrometers. We know the difference, but many times people are actually talking about color, not spectrum. And those two often get interchanged. So what they're really adjusting is the color, not the spectrum, because they have no idea to determine what the spectrum is when they're changing it, unless they have the fortune of having a spectrometer. And some people do. But then again, Logan, beneficial wavelengths. Luca, beneficial wavelengths. These things are built into all of our lights because, again, this data is we don't make this stuff up. This is based on the animal response there. So again, there's that. It's. I always base it on the sun. Yes, blue light is awesome. Heck, Keith, I'm not going to say like I invented the internet, but with my moon lights 25 years ago, people started using these blue lights and watching corals fluoresce, and the rest is kind of history, So, and what I like to say is, we see. I remember one time, it had to be 20 plus years ago, I'd mentioned to Julian Sprung about keeping corals under just blue light. And back then he thought I was nuts. But now we've proven over time that corals can adapt. Many of these corals, by the way, that are in anybody's tanks are usually collected within 15 or 20 feet of water. These people aren't diving 80 feet down deep in the ocean to get these corals. So what we're seeing is, an animal that came out of 15 or 20 feet of water where light is in fact still full spectrum, but here they are thriving under blue light. Yes, their color is changing. There are differences and there are changes in that regard, but these animals are in fact thriving. The same thing with UV. In nature, UV has a purpose. I could take up this whole talk in terms of the purpose of UV in nature, okay? But one thing we've proven in the hobby is corals can thrive without UV. So rather than argue about the absolutes or anything like that, I suggest let's learn from these differences. And that's how we can really progress forward with the hobby, because now we've seen that corals can grow under blue light. Corals can grow without UV. We see all these different things. So, those are things that can be learned from.
Yep.
So, Tullio, sorry.
Go ahead, Dong, and then I want to cover this question by Kristen Reef.
I actually have a quick question for Tullio. So at 15 feet deep, so what kind of par do you get in the ocean?
Well, I did not measure for PAR. I measured for spectrum.
Okay, all right.
If you
Yeah.
look up, if you go to my timeline, on Facebook and do some scrolling, you'll see I posted the data. And of course, other people have posted the data as well. But the red is still there. The green is still there. All those wavelengths are still there. In fact,
You don't lose it till 10 meters.
Okay.
I did post a spectral image of moonlight, and I did publish the PPFD, which is in that spectral image when I took the measurements. And again, moonlight is white. Moonlight is not blue.
Yes, exactly.
If you look at moonlight, it's actually full spectrum. You will see the entire visible spectrum represented.
So I wanted to have you guys address this question, and she loves your lights there, Luca. So we talked about this before in terms of LED light degradation, and in terms of the lifespan of an LED fixture, you know, before they lose that critical spectrum or power. And I kind of want to add to this question too, in terms of, you know, so the way that a hobbyist can do that is using a PAR meter over, you know, a number of years to try to determine exactly what kind of, you know, PAR might have been lost. But there's a lot of PAR meters out there, and a lot of people have different opinions about, you know, what PAR meters are more effective than other PAR meters. So I just want to ask the panel, you know, Kristen's question, and also ask, you know, an additional question in terms of recommendations on a PAR meter to utilize to try to figure this all out. But, you know, are there any rules of the road in terms of, you know, I mean, Tullio, you mentioned 5-6 years or something like that in terms of replacing an LED fixture. I did just test my Mitras, my GHL Mitras, and it seemed like I didn't really lose much PAR at all after 5 years. Maybe it was like 10% or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you guys go jump in.
Okay. First of all, when I say 5 to 6 years, I like to be conservative. Okay. When working with Luxian, when they were first saying LEDs were going to last 100,000 hours, I was the guy saying, whoa, hold on, guys. Come on. Let's be honest here. Right. So again, I like to be conservative. Listen, I have fixtures out there that are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, no different than Logan, and they're still working. Okay. So again, that fixture, are you running your fixture at 100% for 18 hours a day, or are you running it at 50% for 8 hours a day? There's a big difference. What's the difference in the ambient environment? Is your ambient temperature 75 degrees? Is it 85 degrees? And, you know, some of the hotter places like Florida and other places, that can make a big difference as well. So again, there are a bunch of, let's say, variables, if you will. And in terms of the degradation, a blue LED, for example, and by the way, white LEDs are blue LEDs with phosphor coatings at the end of the day, right? But
well, they can be violet too, though.
Yes,
if you want to get into,
yes, they can be UV.
Yeah,
they can be UV as well. They can be UV. They can be violet. But that
as long as it's a higher energy
there,
spectrum,
whether you see it or not. So again, with a straight blue LED or something like that, the degradation might be less than, let's say, a white LED, because the phosphors themselves can actually degrade.
Yeah.
Again, it's just physics. Look at a street light. How many people have seen a street lights where it's starting to look blue? Right? Have you ever seen the street light starting to look blue? That's because the phosphors are degrading. Now, granted, it could be a defective light. It could be anything like that. But many times the phosphors are even fallen off. They've even, you know, it's mostly the phosphor that's susceptible to the degradation, primarily in white LEDs.
What was the question again, Keith?
Well, we're talking about, you know, some sort of way to determine when it's time to replace an LED fixture.
Kristen's question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that dictate the life of the LED. I think we've all been there with LED light bars that the lens actually browns out. And that's the only time you should really get spectrum shift, because most LEDs, plus or minus 5 nanometers, it's very hard to see a lot of shift in LEDs themselves. So the spectrum would change if you got browning or blackening of lenses, or more commonly, the cheaper lenses will yellow over time, which will start changing the spectrum. Design parameters that dictate lifespan, I think you have to look at more than just the LEDs, and that's why I do go to sealed componentry for my lights. I think that greatly expands the life of the fixture. If you can drop your light into the tank and take it out and put it back up and it doesn't break, I think that extends the life of your light quite a bit. And furthermore, I'm finding a lot of reefers don't want to take the time to clean the heat sinks and the fans and things like that. So when you don't have fans, to fail, number one, to you know, if you're running a shop and you have to clean 200 lights with heat sinks and fans, I don't think that's realistic. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's just what I'm saying. For me, I want to make my lights so you can rinse them down and they're clean for the year. And I think that's catching on. So I look at life of LEDs kind of differently. To Logan's point, I have drivers, and I don't think I've ever actually charged anyone for a driver that went bad, even when it's out of warranty. I just send them to them. And you will have diodes that go bad sometimes. You will have a failure in your circuit board. There's all those things. But if you take out the anomalies, a design parameter I strive for is a 6-year life based on the spec sheets and the temperatures. I do take worst case scenario. So my design parameter is 78 degrees Fahrenheit for display tanks, and 90 degrees for industrial applications with the Atlas. And I design from there. So to answer your question, that's where I'm at, is I'm trying to design these to last forever. I have some on my tank farm, my prototypes from 2020 that I let for 80 hours be wrapped in towels in a cooler. They got up to 100 C, I believe, was the temp they got up to. I took them out. I'm still using them more for old time's sake. They're still at 60% of the output. So depends how you treat them. I like Tullio, you said that. It's with everything. Do you want your transformer buried in the cabinet, or do you want access to cool air so it can stay cool? It's up to you to dictate the life expectancy. And in Antarctica, one might last, honestly, 20 years if it never gets above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Logan?
In terms of longevity, I mean, like I said, there's photons that were released in 2015 that are still out there. I mean, my approach is I have a ginormous heat sink, like the Meridian 45 behind me. I have to check the weight. I have the exact weight listed to like 0.1 pounds on the website. It's over 10 pounds. It's somewhere in that range, like 8 to 10 pounds, all aluminum. So it does basically almost all of its cooling is just through convection into the air. The fans do come on occasion. And my comment about like wiping your lights down every now and then is mostly if you have like a little bit more splashing than normal. You don't really see a whole lot of dust accumulation. Like I've got lights that haven't been touched. Like literally nobody has done anything to them for 6 years. And the dust, there's a little bit there. If you blow it out with some compressed air, it's gone. Really, the main concern is like salt buildup, and that's more like bottom side of the light, damp towel. It's not really top of the heat sink kind of a thing.
So I have a funny thing to share. So because that I have the LED display here when people come in to look for new LED. Guess what's the most common thing they do? They run their finger throughout on the fixture to see how hot it is. That is a very common thing for buyers. So I have so many fingerprints on this thing. I have to wipe it off frequently. Actually, I have to wipe it off with sanitation towel. So that every time they come here, people just try to run their fingers through the light fixture to see how hot it is. So
Hey, Keith,
Especially
I'd like
when
to-
people try to put their.
I mean, the
Go
edge
ahead,
bar
go ahead.
even has a temperature controller. Like
What?
in the app, you could choose what temperature threshold you want to set. So if it ever hits that, it'll automatically dim down. Just because that one doesn't have active cooling like the Meridians do. Couldn't fit a fan on there, you know.
Logan, when you made the comment about the salt creep, I was smiling with you. I've seen Reef Brite units so caked in salt creep. They're still working, so caked in salt creep. And I'm just like, dude, have you ever wiped this thing down? Just like a simple, you know, what have you. But Keith, since this is a lighting talk, let's give some of the viewers a useful tip. Okay?
That would be great.
Something about par meters, right? And by the way, Don, do this when you get done talking, please. Do this one. You have a par meter?
Yes, I do.
Okay. When you use your par meter, Don, you measure the light straight up, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. When you take measurements in different areas, so for example, your light fixture's here, and I'm measuring here, take a measurement straight up, but also angle your par meter relative to the light source. I demonstrated this. Yes, I demonstrated this to Mike Paletta. I was at his house, standing at his tank. I just indiscriminately picked up his par meter. It didn't matter what the light was. And I said, hey, Mike, look, I'm measuring your par right here. And I was measuring straight up. And it was 400. I changed the angle relative to the light source. The PPFD jumped up to 600 or higher.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, because I always thought that you have to be pointing up.
Perpendicular.
Huh.
You,
Yeah,
the
perpendicular.
goal is
Yeah.
seeing the light relative to the light source. Yes. So measure straight up. Keep doing that, but also angle your par meter so that it's relative to the light source. And I've seen Logan shaking his head because I use what it's called a light gantry, where I will actually put my equipment, my spectrometer and otherwise, and it's like a glorified swing. And I can actually measure the light relative to the light source. It's called the light gantry. Light testing facilities use this for that exact reason, because the reading I'm going to get over here and the reading I'm going to get over here are going to be two different readings.
So, Tullio, why is there what? Let me just ask.
Sorry that bring up an interesting point is that remember when people talk about mounting SPS?
Yes.
And people say mounting at an angle and they grow better. Would that be possible because they're getting more par?
Well, the light's hitting it at an angle that's determined by the optics in your fixture. That angle could be steeper or narrower depending on what you have installed. I mean, like the edge bars, for example, they got 45-degree optics, but the Meridian behind it has 90s installed. So you're getting a wider light from the central light and a narrower band of light that has a little bit more power from the outside.
You're punching
the
down.
angle of the fixture itself too is going to affect what parts of your coral are actually getting hit by light. You could see it with, you even see it visually. If you look at your coral, you tilt the light towards it, of course, underneath, you're going to cut some shadows out and you're getting light to areas that are otherwise shaded out by, like, corals can grow at, your SPS tank, and I'm sure you have to trim your colonies because they start growing over each other and shading each other out.
Wow.
Well, let's
thank you.
Let's also kind of like just that kind of dovetails on another topic in terms of light spread, with LED fixtures and lenses and all that sort of thing.
It also depends. I apologize.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Getting back on topic with par meters, it depends on the meter you use. Like I have like my spectral radiometer. It has like a very small point source, data collection instrument, is the way I would put it. It's like it's totally flat, so you got to point it right at the light, and you have to angle it towards the light to get like an accurate reading. I have a couple apogee par meters though, and they have a dome shape.
They're wrong.
And it matters a little bit less how much you angle it. It will definitely go up if you angle it directly at the light, but not quite as much as with like my spectrometer. So that's something to keep in mind too, is like the device or the instrument that you're using can make a little bit of a difference there.
Well, and for clarity, I did use Mike had an apogee meter, okay, and yes, you are correct. The filter on the sensor itself, okay, you have that kind of shape, but you would be surprised that, like I said, I took it and I said, here you go, here's 400, and then all I did at the same exact location was did this, and the PPFD went right up to like 600.
You know,
Do you know what the angle of the
throw
optics are? I'd be curious if like a narrower or wider optic would have a greater impact on that. Either way, I think good practice to aim towards the light.
But the same thing will still happen though, meaning the source is here. If you're measuring here and you're measuring straight up, you're getting this, not to mention in terms of there's other things going on. Whereas if your light is here and you're measuring here and you now do this, you will get a completely different reading.
I think consistency is just key to your testing. And to your point, you can wiggle the par meter around while you're looking at one point of light, and you can get different par angles. But then at the end of the day, as long as you're consistent, I think that's the most important thing. So like Keith,
this is Luca, not to cut you off. I'm not saying it for that, but imagine this. Imagine you measured your par and it's 400. Okay. You don't know that at an angle, it could be 600 or 700. And you think you need more par. So now you jack that up to 800. Well, now what has this gone up to?
No, I like it. Yeah, no, I like it, and I think what the listeners are going to learn from this is when you get a par meter to do the different angles. And I saw Jim Telegram say you need to angle towards the glass too, and I agree with that. But for testing a light performance, you know, I just believe if you have a standard test rig, standardized methods, I want to take all that variability out of it. But people have been asking like, what's a good par meter? And some people are saying I don't use them ever. Sometimes I use them a lot. I wish par meters were like $5 and I could include one in every purchase, because you use it. I mean, I gotta say, Rich is like literally spot on with this. You use it to tune, to set up, and after that, you don't use them that much. And I do like that clubs. I know, Dong, you've talked about this before. Some clubs have par meters to rent, and I think that's the coolest thing ever. So
actually, my par meter is out all the time. It's free to use, so people just come here and pick it up and use it and to turn it back. So yeah, it's out. It's not here. Actually, I just figured out.
I think you're much better off borrowing like a really good high quality par meter, as opposed to buying the cheapest one you could find. I mean, for example, with my lights, they're very heavy in UV and violet. An older par meter, or a lot of them, they ignore a lot of spectrum until you hit like there's a steep drop off when you get below like 450, in some extreme cases even like 460. Like there's a curve where it just ignores some of that light, but it's ignoring the most important light that your LED fixture is putting out, which is in the violets. So you could, for example, if you have a cheaper meter, you might be reading like 100 par because it's only picking up like your white LEDs and your blue LEDs. But in reality, you could be getting twice that, or a significant percentage more. And the violet light is the most energetic light as well. So if you're undercounting the most powerful part of the light spectrum, you really could be doing damage to your corals. So it's important, if you can borrow a high quality par meter, that's the best way to go.
What's your favorite?
It doesn't always make sense, Logan, to buy one for $500.
What's your favorite par meter?
What I use is the apogee meters.
Which one?
I have the 400 series, the newer one that they released. I can't remember if it was like the 405 or 410. Mine's a little different than what a lot of hobbyists will buy, where it like plugs into, you just have like the little handheld blue meter. Mine plugs directly into my computer. So that I could log all the readings and stuff like that. But that seems to be the most, like, if you're looking for something that'll give you a good reading, seems to be kind of the standard, where it picks up the violets pretty well. And most reefers are using that on like the higher end of like par meters. So it's good comparison wise, like hobbyist to hobbyist.
Yep.
Let's. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the thing I started talking about before in terms of lenses and those different options. Diffusers, are those important? Can you guys
optic
just
versus-
go ahead, Dom?
Oh, so actually, that I pick up from one of your you guys a previous live stream. They talk about LED with optics versus lenses. So can you guys just elaborate a little bit about that? Because some of the LED does have optics or reflectors. Sorry, I should correct myself. Reflectors versus lens. And LED can have refractors.
Tullio,
What
I
would
can
you guys
up
say?
with
I'll
one word.
start. In fact, some LEDs actually have reflectors built right into the package itself. You can't see it, but they actually have a reflector built into the package. Now, the confusion here is an LED will have a lens. That's to protect the LED itself. That's the basic package, right? So the LED, again, it's a diode, it's a dye, and then you have the LED package itself. So like, Logan, when you refer to the Cree, like X lamps and what have you, when you say X lamp, what you're referring to is actually the type of packaging. Because in fact, Cree will use the same dye in other package. There's a whole other aspect of
they're the same solder footprint and everything.
Exactly. Now, when you refer to optics, there are often what we call secondary optics, which go on top of the LED itself. So that's the difference. The lens, in historically, the lens is to protect the LED itself.
Tullio, but I think you're getting super technical here, because every single manufacturer will say this has a 120-degree lens, and what they're referring to is actually the secondary optics. So I don't want to confuse this. I think you're 100% correct, but for the hobbyist, the lens is the acrylic or whatever secondary optic, and then a reflector. I believe everyone would agree that that's like a metal, like a halide reflector would be what they're thinking of. I totally get what you're saying, but
that's what I was
picturing.
Confuse
people. Yeah.
Well, and there's different LED packages. So, for example, if it's a Rebel, or if it's like a Lambertian type package, or your new circuit on board, where it's basically just filled. So again,
Black,
these are right. These are just flat packages, and yes, those LEDs will have differing angles. Will have different radiant angles depending on the LEDs and things like that. Now, optics, like everything else, they can be good and they can be bad. Historically,
depends on the application.
Well, yeah. And here's the thing. On the older LED fixtures, the reason why corals were getting burned, for example, they used the term burning. It wasn't that LEDs were super powerful in that regards. They were focusing the light. So I often say, if we were outside in the sun having a conversation, and I took a magnifying glass and put it on your arm, what's going to happen? Has the energy from the sun changed? No, I've just focused the light. Okay. Now, what they do oftentimes is the reason why they did this was to drive the light down deeper, right? They want the light to go down deeper, which is great in theory. But the problem is that coral at the surface is getting bombarded with this focused light. So again, manufacturers have kind of learned from that. They've used different optics, different designs, and things like that. But like everything else, there's no one perfect optic. You can have a narrow optic that's great for this application, or you can have no optics at all, which is ideal for this application. Again, it really depends on the system and the overall design.
And that's why I have 3 different optic sets. Those molds weren't cheap. I've got 45, 90, and 110. So anything from for a 45-degree angle, right? I've got customers who got their lights 17 inches above the water, and they've got a 4-foot deep tank, and they want to be growing corals on the sand bed. So they use those tighter optics.
Right.
I've also got coral farms who have a 3 foot by 10 foot by like 12-inch coral flat, and they want their lights like, you know, maybe 1.5 foot off the water, and they need the wider optics because they're trying to cover 3 feet and have SPS down the middle and softies towards the side. So there's a ton of different applications, and you know, the way I like to put it. So I went to a trade show many years ago. It was one of my first ever trade shows. And I brought 2 lights with me. This was back, like, we're talking value fixtures, which today they're called black box LEDs. But, you know, like 15 years ago, I called them the value fixture, right? So I had one with no optics. So just the chips that come as packaged with, you know, the regular lens from the factory, the old style 3-watt Bridgelux LEDs. Now, they typically come out of the factory somewhere around 100 and anywhere from 140 to like 115 degrees, depending on the chipset. Like Tullio said, every LED is going to be a little bit different. You have to read the data sheet for that particular LED, but basically just super wide, right? So I had that light, and I had another light next to it with 60-degree optics. So something that was pretty darn narrow. And I had a par meter, and I'd ask passersby, I got these lights at the same intensity. Which one is brighter? And everyone would point the one without optics. They're like, that one's brighter. I put a par meter in front of it. And then I go, okay, I'd say I get like 200, right? I put a par meter in front of the other one, and it's like 650, something insane, like a multiple, because you're taking that light and you're focusing it into a smaller area. So that's kind of where the balance comes in. You know, you don't want to be lighting your wall, but you also don't want to have your light so focused that you're burning everything up top, and your corals at the bottom aren't getting any light because your cone is so narrow that it doesn't spread to the sand bed.
Now, Logan, I have a question for you because you brought up a great topic, right? If I and you're absolutely correct in your scenario, right? The one without optics, you did have a much wider spread. And if you measured all of that light and added it up, you would come back to a similar conclusion. It's called inverse square law. It's called inverse square law. Light doesn't just disappear. That's what people don't understand. The reason why you're getting these various, you know, PPFD, because if you think about it, light travels light years in space. I mean, it's astronomical. We can't even fathom how far light actually travels and how fast it travels and all these other implications. So believe it or not, 1 foot or 2 is nothing to a photon per se. The difference is their direction. Are they all going this way? Are they going this way? But if you add them all up, if you measure them all up, you're going to come to about the same. And the one thing that I try to recommend to people is to find that balance, because Logan, you would agree, if you have your light fixture too high, at that point, you're just wasting light. Because now you really have to crank things up to get it down, you know, is to find that happy medium between, you know, spread, coverage, PPFD, those kind of things. So experiment with that as well, because if your light is 2 feet, you know, off the tank, well, it has to do a lot more work, meaning the light fixture itself, to get those, you know, PPFD readings versus the light being even 12 inches above the tank.
Yeah, I think my take on this discussion is, so for the viewers out there, if we're talking about a round lens, we're talking about one application. But if this was gardening or something like that, that's like, okay, your lawnmower is like that. But you have commercial lawnmowers, you have different options. So in lighting, for LED, yes, the acrylic or, you know, PMMA lens, whatever, you know, these ubiquitous things that everyone uses, that's one application. You can have different spreads, but it's still one point light source and it's beaming no matter what you do. Now you do have, like Ecotech has the HEI lens, which is more of a diffuser, and you get a lot of spread and you get a lot of diffusion with that. So that's a different family. So you have the single lens family, you have these diffusers, you have lenses that are actually linear, and you have multiple LEDs under one lens that allows blending in the x-axis, if you will, but then it shoots it all out and it shoots it down. And then you have aluminum reflectors, which are taking bounced light and they're going to throw it down into the tank. So based on that, you know, and Tullio, your Reef Brite, XHO has a reflector in it. It's pretty cool design. It was one of the first LEDs on the market, etc. So you have a lot of different applications. And I will say, to add to this commentary, you guys have covered the basics of acrylic lenses in depth. There's a lot of applications that don't need that type of lens, but we don't have enough options out there because who wants to ship a huge box?
Nope, we lost your audio, Luca. Nope, we lost you.
Out of battery.
I don't know. Can you
Okay.
hear me now?
Now it's working.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So what I was just going to end with saying is that I think that the coral, the reef keeping community, that means industry, hobbyists, everything. There's a need for more diversity in LED lighting technology. And I'm going to just go back to the one that I think diverges from the mold, and it's the Atlas. It's got a big ass aluminum reflector. It has a radial lens. It has 720 LEDs that use a completely different chip technology than the 1 watt, 3 watt, 5 watt. The lights that hobbyists need are not the same lights that actual coral growers need. And I think there's going to be divergence, and I think there's going to be innovation. And I think we will be getting to the days where those applications will become maybe a company's focus. So I just want to add, there's so many families of lenses and optics that aren't being used currently in the industry. There's a big, huge white space. It's super exciting. And then I got a shout out to Kessel. I mean, they took an interesting approach way back in the day. It's a very unique and beautiful light. I'm not saying it's going to be like the best light ever. It's very beautiful. So now, do lights evolve, I should say, into here's your functional lights, here's your beautiful lights, here's the lights that actually can grow coral at affordable costs that can last for 10, 15 years, that are cleaned in 5 seconds. I think there's so many different applications. So, you know, that's my answer to you, Keith and Dong, is I think this next 10 years, we need to see more innovation in how the light, okay, we get it, we have an LED that makes light, but how that light can go from that chip to your tank, there's so many interesting ways to explore and develop. And that I see is where innovation is going to start happening. That's just my final thoughts on that topic.
With that said, actually, so many years ago, I saw one prototype of LED for reef tank. It's very interesting. The idea is that when the light hit the water surface, 50% of light will be reflected. They're only 50% entering the water. So what they did is that they have a gigantic acrylic block. The block actually submerged under this water surface. So then all the light travels through the block and goes straight into the sink, into the tank, so they can use 50% of power. But then I asked them a question, then what happened to coral and algae to cover that acrylic lens? And I said, never think about that.
Well, the other thing too is I actually find sometimes PAR readings are higher inside of tanks as opposed to through air. And the reason being, a lot of that light reflects back off the glass.
Oh, okay.
And the water itself, I mean, yeah, it's thicker than air, but it really doesn't slow light down that much faster, at least on the scale that we're at when you're talking about like aquariums that are, you know, maybe some big tanks in the hobbyist grade are like 4 feet deep. I mean, I know Polo Reef has a massive reef that's kind of an outlier, but you know, when you're talking like a 2, 3, 4, 5 foot deep tank, the water column isn't really stopping light any more than air does.
Well, here's it, and Logan, I'm glad somebody just asked me this last week, so it's great that you brought this up. And by the way, guys, you can Google this, okay? It's called refractive index. Air has a refractive index of about 1.03. It can never be 1 because, again, in physics, there's always going to be loss. So there's no such thing as 1. So air is about 1.03 versus measurement in a vacuum, okay? Now, water, light does, in fact, travel slower in water than it does in air. So that now goes to like, it's like 1.033 or whatever it is, or 1.33, I forget but light absolutely travels slower in water than it does in air. But you are right, Logan, that's offset because you get the reflection off the glass, you get other things happening. Now, as soon as light strikes the surface of that water, 10 to 15% is potentially lost. And again, that's just physics. It's reflected light. You know, these are just basic parameters. But the one thing that I did find interesting, is, for whatever reason, light travels a little faster in fresh water than it does in salt water. And why? Because if you think about it, salt
Less
water.
density.
Exactly. Salt water, and you have a lot more ions, you have a lot of things going on. So these photons, when they're interacting, because that's the other thing that's fascinating about light. If you took a piece of glass and you passed a photon through it, the photon going in is not the same identical photon going out. It may be the same wavelength, it may be the same energy and all of that, but it's like a bouncy ball effect. That photon is absorbed by an electron. Another one is absorbed. Once that electron becomes full, it's at its highest energy state. Another photon comes along and knocks a photon out at an equal energy level and wavelength. So again, with light, that photon that's leaving your fixture, there's so many interactions, the surface of the water, the things in the water, there's a lot of things going on. But you are right, Logan, that in our aquarium, when we're talking a foot or two of water, that's nothing. That's nothing. It's really.
Can I translate something here, Tullio?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just take all of that physics and distill it down to, if you put the wrong angles on your light, more of the light will bounce off the water and go onto your walls. And the light speed underwater, it's cool stuff, but it's the reality is that you don't want your light angles. So what Logan was saying, really wide light angles, it will be such an angle that it will actually bounce off the water line. Where if you reach the specific angles that are required for what all the physics that Tullio is talking about, if you do that, then it'll go down. So my biggest thing is my biggest advice is, people like to take light bars and angle them at 45-degree angles in. I'm like, guys, you are losing so much light. It's bouncing, it's bounce back. It's coming off the water and going off. So like for my approach, I like to do just everything super simple. So I work the angle of my LEDs. I do then the angles that minimizes bounce back, but still gets you that angle going at your corals. I think that's the big takeaway, is that the interaction between the interface of air to water, water to glass is very important, and you can't underestimate those. And the principles behind that are the medium that it travels through. But I want to tell you that the Quanta lights, I have a particle accelerator that actually makes the light faster underwater. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking around. That'd be a marketing thing that you could use.
Damn,
but
that's
does that make sense
Wow.
to the team out there about like the angles and how you can use that for your own lights? I hope like that kind of sheds it in, because Tullio, you really do know the background of light and refraction and stuff like that. I'm just trying to keep it into the hobbyist, like what does that mean and application wise. So Dong, water, you could take lights, actually, you could put them in the bottom of your aquarium on a spotlight and angle them, and you could actually light the top of your tank down from the refraction of the water. no one's going to do this, but these things can be done if you wanted to.
I think the key takeaway is keep
Go
your
ahead.
glass clean. You'll get more light reflecting off and back on your corals.
Bang.
Wash down your
Yeah,
fixtures.
yeah.
There you go. Hey guys, listen, Luca, Logan, Tullio, this was a fascinating discussion. I'm sure we can go on for another couple more hours and talk about just lighting. Really geek out some more on this stuff. But I just want to thank you guys for spending the time, your valuable time, joining us tonight. And I'm sure everybody out there got something out of this chat.
Yes, Keith, I'd like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, and I wish everyone a very prosperous and healthy New Year.
Ditto.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure talking to you, Logan and Tullio, and of course, the famous Keith and Dong combo. So rock on, guys.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also want to thank
pleasure.
I just want to thank our sponsors one more time, Polo Reef. Make sure to check out Polo Reef's latest YouTube videos. Seriously, to quote Dong, they've been dropping some really cool stuff lately. The team is wrapping up a pretty crazy. That's the copy I'm reading. It says seriously. So I mean, that's Dong's line. Seriously,
It's the best.
The team is wrapping up a pretty crazy year, and they actually take you back to where the entire 17,000-gallon reef started, all the way from the early days to what's become now 13 years later. They also go 15 feet under the aquarium for some behind-the-scenes maintenance, dig into ICP tests that are showing unexpectedly high middle levels, and even team up with the Ivy Leagues, where Andrew's been working with researchers at Yale to bring a more scientific edge to the hobby. Super cool stuff. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to @Polo Reef on YouTube so you don't miss any of the new videos when they drop. Champion Lighting and Supply. Todd, thank you, man, for sending myself the Reef Delight lens port and coral lens. Dong's got one of those things too. I'll run the video I took a few weeks ago using that device. And let me tell you, man, it's a game changer in terms of underwater videography, photography. So check it out. If you want to pick one up, visit championlighting.com. A big thank you to Paul, who's also the moderator. And I saw Greg Carroll was out there. He's also a moderator. Thanks, guys. Both are presidents of their local reefing societies. Please join and support your local reefing clubs. They are so important to the hobby. Finally, I want to let you guys know that all episodes of Rappin' With ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. The next Rappin' With ReefBum live stream will be on Tuesday, January 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have both Julian Sprung on as well as Charles Delbake. So be sure to tune into that one. As Tullio said, happy holidays to everybody, and we will see you in the new year. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Adios.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, guys.